So I'd like to thank Nana for helping host with the recordings and everything, and all of you being here. This is our second or fourth sessions of another pass at Lojong teachings, mind training teachings. We're going to start with some prayers, and I know some people are still arriving. So let me just find our, let's see, prayers and practices. Goodness, where am I going here? Okay. Okay, sorry, it's my whole thing is messed up. It's not in any order right now. I don't know what's happened again. This is the standard. I don't know what goes on with my computer. I don't really. Okay, hang on. No, I'm going to find it. I just need to. Maybe I need to just shut everything down and start again. Let me just. Not sure. Okay. But I would like to find these because tomorrow it's going to be the same thing. So let me, sure where the. Okay, I think I've got it. Determined to find this. Saved it here, but it's not here. Okay. So let me figure out. Sorry about this. I'm just not the great organizer of that. Try it from here. Sorry about this.
In progress.
Second. Coming soon. Okay, here we go. I'm going to share my screen. If you can make me a host, am I already? Great, thank you. Okay. So again, we're going to start with some of the essential prayers, as I mentioned last week. I don't know why, again, it doesn't open it up the way it's so strange every time it's different. Yeah, it goes back and forth somehow. I don't know how to. Okay. Again, visualizing the Buddha in the space in front. And we're going to ask for the support and the blessings to help us, our minds better receive teachings to understand more about Lojong and significance in our lives. We'll start with the praise to Shakyamuni Buddha. Might be too small for people. There we go. Guru, teacher, Bhagavan, Tathagata Arhat, perfectly complete Buddha, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, Shugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of beings to be subdued, teacher of gods and humans, to you, Buddha Bhagavan, glorious conquer Shakyamuni, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. Guru, teacher, Bhagavan, Tathagata Arhat, perfectly complete Buddha, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, Shugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of beings to be subdued, teacher of gods and humans, to you, Buddha Bhagavan, glorious conquer Shakyamuni, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. Guru, teacher, Bhagavan, Tathagata, Arhat, perfectly complete Buddha, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, Shugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of beings to be subdued, teacher of gods and humans. To you, Buddha Bhagavan, glorious conquer Shakyamuni, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. When supreme amongst humans, you were born on this earth, you paced out 7 strides, then said, I am supreme in this world. To you who are wise, then I prostrate. Seem to get it in the form that, okay. With pure bodies, form supremely pure, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain, fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner of the best, savior to you I prostrate. With the supreme signs, face like a spotless moon, color like gold, to you I prostrate. Dust free like you, the 3 worlds are not, incomparably wise one, to you I prostrate. The Savior having great compassion, the teacher having all understanding, the field of merit with qualities like a vast ocean, to you, the one gone to thusness, I prostrate. The purity that frees one from attachment, the virtue that frees one from the lower realms, the one path, the sublime pure reality, to the Dharma that pacifies, I prostrate. Those who are liberated and also show the path to liberation, the holy field qualify with realizations, who are devoted to the moral precepts, to you, the sublime community intending virtue, I prostrate. Do not commit any unwholesome actions, engage in perfect wholesome actions, subdue one's own mind. This is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a defective view, a butter lamp flame, an illusion, a dewdrop, a water bubble, a dream, lightning, a cloud, see all causative phenomena like this. By these merits may transmigratory beings attain the state of all-seeing, subdue the enemy of faults, and be freed from the ocean of samsara, disturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. We're going to go to the 7-limb prayer. Really thinking about the meaning of each line. I prostrate reverently with my body, speech, and mind. I present clouds of every type of offering, both actually arranged and mentally emanated. I confess all my negative actions and downfalls collected from beginningless time. I rejoice in the virtues of ordinary beings and Aryas. Please remain until the end of cyclic existence and turn the wheel of Dharma for transmigratory beings. I dedicate my own and others' virtues to great enlightenment. Short mandala offering. This ground anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine as a Buddha land and offer it. May all transmigratory beings enjoy this pure land. Yedam Guru Radha Mandala Kam Niratayami. And refuge in bodhicitta. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. O Sangye Chodan Zogi Chonamba Janchu Baju Dagni Gyap Suchi Dagi Chiningi Peso Namgi Drola Penchu Sangye Druparsho Sangye Chodan Zogi Chonamba Janchu Baju Dagni Gyap Suchi Dagi Chiningi Peso Namgi Drola Penchu Sangye Druparsho. Please take a moment and settle your motivation in your mind. So not only putting the mind in the most positive space, but thinking that if you get some information about how to transform your mind, using Lojong teachings, for instance, to really transform your mind from suffering into happiness, using the suffering that you encounter every day to transform your mind into something glorious like a Buddha mind eventually. Reaching that place, full awakening, omniscience, but for the real purpose, traversing through that place. But the real goal, the real purpose is to benefit all living beings unlimitedly, wholeheartedly, perfectly. So any sense, any resonance you have with that motivation, as best as you can, set that intention. This is the reason we engage in these teachings right now. Thank you. Just as a review, last week, we've been talking about the text, excuse me, turning suffering and happiness into enlightenment from Jigme Tempe Nima. Okay? And we're looking at, by means of relative truth, the way of accepting suffering as a path to enlightenment. So we're first working with suffering as a path to enlightenment. There were several points under this. I had asked you to look through points A through G of developing an attitude where you're happy that sufferings arise. You want to get to a point where the suffering is like getting an ice cream cone. Like, can we feel that experience? So most of us, again, are constricted around suffering. We're not interested in having the suffering come. We do all kinds of things to avoid suffering. Of course, it's natural. Okay. So Lojong, again, these higher level teachings, how can I work to transform it? And we were working with suffering as a support to turn away from samsara, to see samsara as nature, suffering as a support of taking proper refuge, suffering as a training to undermine other delusions, like especially arrogance and pride. Okay. Suffering to purify negative karma. Suffering as a support to attract you more to virtue, practicing virtue. Suffering as a training in compassion. And the last was suffering as a support of really cherishing others. Of really cherishing others. That was A through G of those exercises that I asked you to explore. Okay. Any comments, any ideas as you might have been working with those this week? Was there an email sent out? Mm-hmm. Okay, great. So a little reminder, right? Helpful to get the reminder that, because we forget from week to week. So people able to do, how was your week? So one thing you want to look at, okay, is, and I'll just say this over and over. I'm sorry, I'm not kind of sugarcoating, but if you don't do the practice, okay, if you don't get to the practices, and it can be basically your daily meditation practice, or at least a few days a week, you've set something up that's growing in richness, growing in regularity, consistency, right? And if you can't apply some of these teachings, they really don't work for you. So again, a seed will go in where you hear something and you go, okay, That's nice. We really have to start applying it at this point. And just some things I was reading this past week of, this is really what we do for the planet right now, honestly. Like, this is one of the biggest things I think you can do. We always want to know people are suffering and this has happened and there's this political regime and we're unhappy about this, and all those things go on. They've been going on since beginningless time. This isn't new. This isn't some new thing that's arisen, right? People mentioned when COVID happened, it was unusual for our time. It was absolutely unusual, but there's been other diseases. And then we remember that suddenly in history there was what was it, the flu, that with the Spanish flu they called it, or what was it? And it was like 100 years before.
Yeah.
So this isn't any, and I think many more people died from it. So again, this isn't some new thing that's happening. But we want to know, what do? You take care of your mind. One of the best ways to take care of your mind is to practice Lojong, mind training. Lo is mind, Tibetan, mind. Jong, training, transforming the mind, turning the mind from the suffering things. And it's interesting, you learn a lot about a methodology, philosophy, based on the words. For instance, the North Americans that are labeled Eskimo, right, that live a lot in Alaska, and they have many, many words for snow. So it tells you something about their culture, that they must live in a lot of snow, a lot of words. So Tibetan system, we have many words for mind. So it tells you it's all about working with your mind. Consciousness, I'll give you as a synonym often for mind. Okay. And another thing I wanted to mention is, so it's one thing of, one thing to look at in your own practice. If you didn't get to the exercises, you weren't really thinking or looking at them, I also asked, can you read the text again? It's a short text, it's 7 pages. Can you read the text again? Because you go in a little bit more unfolding, questions might arise, things like that. And when you go in a little bit more and try the exercise, if you're not doing it and the email came and you looked and you went, oh, that's nice, and then gone, right? Is ask yourself, why don't I do it? So this is your own personal relationship with your practice. You don't need to tell me why you didn't do it. It's for yourself to understand, what are the mechanisms? What are the mechanisms? One of the things I quoted over the weekend in the weekend course is, where's the actual full quote? I really like this. Where's my nice, karma is really loud. I was just looking for the rest of that. Karma is really loud. So we're just severely distracted. It's that loudness, and so as a result, why you don't do your practice, why you don't get to your practice. But you have to yourself understand the triggers that keep you away from the practice. How do you transform those? It's really important. How do you transform those? I looked at those in my own practice over the years of when cell phones came along and they were so delectable with all these new little features that you could do, these smartphones. And then I noticed, like, and you see how people, now I notice, and this has been the last some years, it's sometimes like an extension of people's bodies, their phone. Like, and I've even found myself where when I'm looking for directions, I'm walking down the street with this phone. And so that's my map now. But you see people where, and I notice, especially with younger people, my niece, my nephews, how they go out of the house and their phone is in their hand, separate, holding it in a separate way. So you've always got this appendage now, this other thing. And so I noticed having that early on, sometimes in practice, and then I realized, I'm sitting, why do I need the phone here? Because then it would distract me. That was a new thing. Suddenly this thing showed up where, so for me, I got that out of the room. I didn't need that. So I don't care if it vibrates. I don't care what it's doing. Even if you have it on silent, you see it. If it's turned face up, you out of the room. That was distracting me. And then as soon as you go, I'm just going to respond to the one, There you go. And then there goes a half an hour. You're gone and some messages. So notice that the trigger is it that you don't have a proper place to sit in your home space. Find the place, set something up, make it simple. Try, you might try one area for a while, try what kinds of things you want around you so it's inviting, safe nest for yourself. That's where you do your work. So figure out what keeps you from, what's more important. What do you say is more important? Okay, so then I asked you another thing. If you're actively dying, how do these things, what things are a problem, the suffering that arises? What was your suffering this week? I'm just curious. What came up for you this week? Big suffering, small suffering? What were some of the things? Anybody feel to say? What kind of things are you working with?
Oh,
If
I
anybody
can,
wants to say,
I can share. Maybe.
normal human things.
From the small things in traffic,
So you're in traffic.
yeah, for example.
Okay.
And having a situation where you feel like somebody is not doing the right thing.
Okay,
So the small normal things,
okay,
all the way to bigger things where you feel real injustice in your team, let's say, appointments that have been made.
mhm,
So the expectation that things would go in this way,
mm,
and then getting taken off that path,
mhm,
feeling some sort of injustice.
right,
And with both, I played with the small one for the traffic. I played with there's irritation.
yep,
It was nice.
right,
It was nice. And for the bigger one, one where we say, all right, I'm not the only one going through this.
right,
This happens often. Both were nice. And then you also notice many, many moments where it happens and you don't think about the practice.
and you don't think about it.
And you just move through life. And the reason is simply busyness. There's too much
Mhm.
going on that I think that needs to be done.
So what, can everybody hear him online? Okay, great, wonderful, that's great. Thank you. So what's your name again?
Basurama.
Basurama, what's a beautiful name.
Thank you.
Basurama. So fantastic examples. And here, so once again, first he's saying, traffic, you're stuck in traffic. Okay. So let me go back to A. Turning away from samsara. This is samsara. Sorry, you're going to be in traffic. That's just how it is. So there would be a perfect example going, well, this is, what did I, then you said I have an expectation. I had an appointment and I had an expectation. You're some sort of meeting. You expect people on their end to hold up their end. This is samsara again. Not everybody does. Some people get sick. Some people didn't understand the arrangement, what was supposed to happen. Some people don't perform work very well. They don't know how to keep up their end. Like, this is all samsara's thing. So if again, I'm kind of going, what did I expect? Every time we have an expectation, it sets us up for disappointment, right? You have to make sure your expectations are leveled in reality. A lot of times they're not, because I just forgot about samsara's nature. So I expect the person to show up perfectly the way I did, and even the way I showed up is not perfect if I don't have a direct perception of emptiness and I don't have a Buddha mind like that. But again, we're set up for a certain vision. We were talking about it this weekend, that the view that we have that comes from our mind. Okay. And then you show up again. And so here's suffering as a supported training and dispelling arrogance. I have a certain expectation. I have an expectation of you. You didn't fulfill it. So again, I have to realize, let me turn away from my arrogance. There's arrogance. If I didn't have the arrogance, I might not be suffering right now. So perfect examples, great examples, right? And then if you were dying, actively dying now, by the way, we're all dying right now. Maybe, hopefully not actively, not too fast. If you were dying, like, would the traffic bother you if you're dying? Like, maybe you are going home and you're in a lot of pain from some doctor's office and you just want to get home. But most of the dying people I know, actively dying, all those mundane things go away. It's not really what they're focused on. It's often like, where's their mind in that space? Is the mind peaceful? They have other things they're concerned about. You know, the situation at work, now you might say, well, if I'm actively dying, I'm not going to be at work, but maybe you are. Some people are. Some people still work for a while. You know, but different things they tend to take issue with, you know, bigger things. So you can always think, if I was dying, would I be upset with this? So very helpful to keep thinking about these things, keep rolling through, please keep rolling through A through G. Thank you very much. Any other comments? So do,
Someone on Zoom.
Yeah. Maybe I would like to
so I
ask,
was just looking if anybody,
There's no sound.
the
no, did
sound
somebody
from
have
the
their hand up? I don't see anybody having their hand up.
Yes.
Oh, Vitas, sorry,
Yeah,
please.
so I have a
Okay,
question.
wait, we can't, wait, hang on, Vitas, we're gonna get the sound working.
Sorry,
Ah, that's great.
Hang on one sec.
maybe now. Can you try again?
Hello?
Great, thank you.
Okay. So my question is, shall we understand samsara more as internal experience or external? Like negative emotions? Is it samsara too? Or
Negative, so samsara is, technically, it means, it's a Sanskrit word that means to cycle, to turn. We're turning through cyclic existence, all of which the Buddhist philosophy says is suffering. So it can be an internal experience of your emotions. Delusions certainly are part of samsara. When you're out of samsara, you basically have brought an end to all of your gross mental afflictions, which are delusions. But then it also manifests externally of suffering like
Okay.
that.
But is it correct to think if we subdue all negativities, then the life itself will be much better than it is right now?
If you certainly reach nirvana and bring about, as they say, a permanent cessation of all your mental afflictions, it's much better. There's no question. Yes.
So actually, it is not correct to think that samsara is the life itself.
Samsara is the life itself.
Yeah, so like visible external life.
Samsara is cyclic existence, is what it
Mm.
represents. And all of that is suffering according to this tradition. So you can stay, what most people do, and this is, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. This is our normal experience, is we muck along in samsara, and I'm going to say as ordinary beings, because that's the nature of ordinary beings, is we live in samsara. It's not like a separate thing out there. It's part of our life as having contaminated aggregates. So meaning I've come back and taken rebirth again with contaminated body and mind. And I'm not laying a trip on myself. It's not that I'm bad. It just means I don't have a direct perception of emptiness or high realizations. And then as a result, everything I experience is tainted with the wrong view of reality. And then based on that, I make decisions and participate in it in an often an incorrect manner, over exaggerating the things I grow attached to because my view is over embellishing them, being averted from things I am not attached to because I'm seeing an underestimation of the reality that's there, all based on my not having a direct perception of that reality. And as a result, it causes me to suffer because from the over embellishment, I grow attachment. From the underestimation, I grow aversion and hatred and anger. And that makes me suffer. So that's what I mean is when we are in samsara, as ordinary beings are, that's what we experience. And we're trying to, but no, you can get out of samsara. You can get out of samsara. So you don't leave it there and go, well, I'll never be able to do it. Everybody can get out. Will it take effort? Of course. Yeah. What else would you like to make effort in? We know how to make effort. We like to make effort in making money. We like to make effort in entertaining ourselves. We make a lot of effort in relationships. We make a lot of effort in raising children. We make a lot of effort in getting educated, but are we getting educated in the right things? You know, so we know how to do effort. Effort's not really an issue. It's just, is it directed in the right way? And for some reason, because samsara is very loud again, our effort tends to go into more meaningless things. We're so distracted. So, and I have it myself, I notice myself, you know, here's the Dharma book. I was going to spend an hour or so reading tonight, but here's my like political magazine that somebody happened to just pass to me before I left the United States. And I go, well, that story in the political magazine seems a little more interesting than, you know, Master Chandakirti's da 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 da, you know, like, but, you know, so again, it doesn't mean you don't read those other things, but what's the balance? What's the balance going on? We have to live, we're doing our lives, you know? So again, and there's people, somebody asked me this weekend, I think about deepening their practice, and it's a choice, but it's individual choices set up by our karma. So I notice my choices. It's what are your priorities in life? And based on those, you make choices. And I was very fortunate because early on, I got into the Dharma, but then, and I didn't get ordained for over 13 years being in the Dharma. But fortunately, the choices I was making led me deeper and deeper into the Dharma. You know, there were always other choices to go off this way, but somehow I end up that choice deeper until eventually it just made sense to become a nun. Like that was growing, you know, so that's just my trajectory. It's not everybody's trajectory. It's not everyone's path. You have to do your own path to the top of the mountain and find what's right for you. But again, if you make those choices and Dharma becomes more important, for me, it's all the saving grace. Like it lights me up every day. It really does. But you have to check, what does that for you? Meaning deeply lights you up. I'm not just talking about superficial happiness. And everybody has to find that meaning and find it now. Don't wait any longer. Don't wait any longer. Figure out what's the juice inside of you, what really gives you that. And it's hard. It's not that my life has been easy being a nun, and not at all, you know, but it wouldn't have been easy otherwise. So that for me, it's like, I'd rather do this. I'm very happy to be a nun. With whatever difficulty I face, I'd rather be doing this than what could have been. So, but you have to find what works for you. Does that make sense? Does that make sense, Edith? Or?
Yes, because mostly I thought that previous week about internal suffering, like experiencing negative emotions. And I thought, is it then correct? But now I understand it is both. It is experience of negative emotions and also what we see externally.
Yes. Yeah, and it's almost like it causes us to see these things externally based on our setup, our makeup, karmic makeup. Yeah. And then it would affect samsara. Living in samsara can get really muddy at times, right? It can be really a mess like that based on our attitude, based on how we deal with that. So it's helpful to keep going on and thinking, would I be dying if I was dying right now? You know, so when you don't want to go to too much of an extreme. If I was dying right now, would I be concerned about this? If I was dying right now, I don't care what the boss says. I'm not going to hand in that report. No, you have to practically engage. But again, when things create more suffering, can I look at it and let go a little bit and say, well, if I was dying now, I wouldn't really be so worked up that they didn't like my presentation on this, or that, you know, this wasn't working, or I'm stuck in traffic now. Like and a lot of that, if you let go, then there's an ease of going through living in samsara for a while, but always knowing you can get out of this. You can get out of this situation. It's available to all of us. So I want to also bring in here a little bit.
There are 2 more questions.
Oh, there's more questions. Yes, of course. Absolutely. Please. Is it Marjolaine?
Yes.
Am I pronouncing it Marjolaine?
Marjolein, doesn't
Marjo-
matter. It's a little bit difficult in English, I think.
Marjolaine. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for the teaching. Very, very helpful. But when I tried to do the ABC, most of the time I realized it after I had the suffering, and only later I realized I should have practiced it. Maybe it's, I think maybe we should it be a help to every morning 10 or minutes to think about one or on of those points to help to remember me at the moment that it comes, because, well.
Okay, so first of all, thank you for looking at that and noticing that. So here's the thing is, I mentioned there were 7 of them. You could take 1 a day. But when we are not practiced enough, when we haven't soaked our mind in it enough, in practice in general, okay, you need to be patient with yourself. That especially if we're newer and we're starting newer, and I don't know where you are in your practice, but give yourself some space, realizing the fact that you caught it later is very significant. So give yourself credit for that. And then keep saying, how will I be able to remember more quickly? And that comes from actually establishing a good meditation practice so that you're much more focused on watching the mind as you're going through activities. You really start, first there's mindfulness on your cushion. And there's, again, some basic setups that I'll send through to Lizette of how do you start a basic practice. But some of it is prayers, practices like that a lot of people let go of. They don't want to do, they think it's all about sitting, meditating. You won't meditate well until you have the right framework for it. It's really, really important. So I'm giving a style from Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and it won't resonate with everyone, but try these different small booklets that you start with and try one like every 2 weeks. Give it 2 or 3 weeks till you work your way through a booklet, understand why you're saying this, what does it mean, you know, and then if you get a little basis of that, it starts going more quickly, those verses. Then you go to another booklet, like a Shakyamuni Buddha practice booklet. And what that does is it sets up a basic guru devotion, a guru yoga practice. But that booklet has all these other basic prayers in it. And you slowly learn them, but you can roll it out all day. So I do a little bit, I only have 10 minutes right now. Let me look at the motivation. And you get that done. And then what happens in a couple of weeks is you're already going to know that section. So it goes more quickly. You know, you do a little bit of what you can do, you go to work, you come back, you read another couple pages. So after 2 or 3 weeks, I now understand how the whole book, the little booklet, small, fits together. And then I sit from there, and then I'll maybe do some mantras and feel the Buddha's blessing coming in. Or maybe now I'm just going to sit and watch my breath. Maybe I'm, you know, slowly I'm building the visualization in my mind of the Buddha. That creates calm abiding, focusing my mind on that image. So slowly you start to learn, you get a little taste of different practices. And then there's a wonderful Discovering Buddhism course of establishing a daily practice. Some of you have done that. So take the notes from that, and then you further put together, and then you make any questions, and then you ask again in another class, or get some advice from a teacher. How do I do this? And so that starts to be a component of I'm sitting and I'm a little bit more aware of my mind, and then off the cushion in the face of something, suddenly I'm more aware that I'm doing this, a delusion, while it's happening. And if not, don't worry. When I noticed it later, then I come back to my sitting space and go, wow, what happened today? I was a mess. What was I thinking? What did I do? And then I'm going to analyze a little bit sitting there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. And also I thought the different points. One day for me was very short. For me, it would be better to do 1 week or 2 weeks, so I get
Perfect.
more used to it. Then
I would say perfect, because 1 day is too short to do each of them. So it's absolutely great practice of what you're thinking. Great instinct right there is just say, yeah, I think I'm going to take 1 a week. Then take 1 a week. Absolutely. We actually have 4 weeks of the class, so easily you can, and just, these aren't things just for the class, this is for your life. If you want to keep thinking about it, don't just leave it where 4th class happened, okay, I'm done. Just keep going with it. And it'll unravel deeper, deeper, deeper. right? Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, very, very, I mean, I think great practice, wonderful. There was one other person online. Was there somebody else? Okay.
Yeah, I thought
Oh, Lizette, yes.
yeah, it's kind of my internet goes up and down, so I thought that I kind of noticed how many small areas you have, and without knowing it, it becomes really big. And then I read this article about a lady in Gaza with 3 kids and her situation, and then after that, every time a small irritation came up, I kind of saw her face, and I thought, what am I thinking? This is this is not this is nothing. This is not suffering that I have. This is suffering. And it really helped because she was so alive for me. So the compassion really worked for me. It kind of opens up and it makes it less clinging on and hanging on to that little irritation, which becomes bigger and you start thinking about it. And by having that lady in my mind, I thought, let it go. There's so many worse things that I can think of right now.
Yes.
This is no.
Yes.
So that really helped. That helped for me, at least the personal
Beautiful.
view.
No, I mean,
Yeah.
it's really a beautiful way of using compassion, as there's so many situations in the world now. So thank you for mentioning that how suddenly, you know, we all suffer in different ways, and suddenly our suffering goes down into this little pinprick, as we would say, a little poke of a pin where somebody else just lost, you know. I mean, one of the accounts I read was somebody lost like 127 family members, if that's possible. But they did, you know, they lost their whole family, you know, in the whole Gaza thing. It's inconceivable when you go, oh, and I had trouble getting to work today or something, really, or I have a little stomach upset, or, you know, it's so, but also then using when we have that to bring up of like, and thinking about somebody else's suffering, being more and using it to really grow that compassion. It's amazing. Yeah, amazing. Not always easy, especially with the world right now. So, and keep using. So then we want to use, and this class was also around, and we're going to have a weekend on death focused on heart spoon. It actually has a different name now. She's been calling it something, was calling it something different, but the essence of what is going to happen to you, death is definitely certain. So when you think about that too, of how this text works really well with that, of I can't push death away. There's nothing I can do. There's no power in the universe. There's no power in the universe. And so realizing I need to start really transforming my mind. You know, there's habits in my mind, and it's not about your bad. And it's not growing frustration in your mind that I'm always doing this. It's more that this is my karmic setup. This is my samsara. We all have our own kind of version of samsara. And I know I'm going to die. It's the only thing I can count on is that I'm going to die and that things change. They're impermanent like this. So I can change this as well. I can change my mind. I can change my mind. I have to keep working on, you know, and then letting go more of some of those other, letting go of more of the frustrations about myself. I'm not doing it quickly enough. I didn't notice right away. And then we're just going to continue to work with it. And the next thing, you will be more mindful. We'll be more mindful. We're going to keep talking about that as well. And so I also wanted to bring in a little bit of the 8 verses of mind training. And I was also very proud of myself because I have the dates. I went back to get the dates. Geshe Langri Tangpa lived from 1054 to 1123. Geshe Chikawa, who came later, who found one of the 8 verses, okay, and went on a search to find the author of the verse. And he lived 1102 to 1175. So they did overlap by about 21 years, but Geshe Chikawa didn't find Geshe Langri Tangpa until Geshe Langri Tangpa had passed, and went on, because obviously he'd be very young then, till he studied in the monastery, got, you know, and then was and basically found this one discarded verse of the 8 verses, the famous verse 5, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Went on the search of who wrote this. And, you know, I think it was thousands of miles when he finally found the monastery, found the student of disciple Geshe Langri Tangpa, who said, I'm sorry, but he's passed away, but I'll explain the verse like that. So he again lived early 12th century like that. And I just wanted to bring in some of the 8 verses also to think about other ways we can practice. And they're difficult. They're hard. It's not easy. Now, verse number 1. But you know what? I want to skip to the famous verse, why this was so significant. I want you to think about it. This is a hard one to work with. This is the famous verse 5 of the 8 verses of mind training or thought transformation. Verse 5, when out of envy, others mistreat me with abuse, insults, or the like, I shall accept defeat and offer the victory to others. Okay, again, when out of envy, others mistreat me with abuse, insults, or the like, I shall accept defeat and offer the victory to others. How's that working for you? Think about the significance of this, okay? Offer the victory to others, especially if they're attacking you and upsetting you. Okay, this is an interesting one to try. It's not easy to try, and you need to kind of initially find the right situation, okay? Because we're not habituated with this. This is a very weighty, heavy verse. This is why it blew his mind, basically. Geshe Chikawa, it blew his mind when he went like, what? Yeah. So just think about people study. You can think about them in ancient days studying, and they were like us. They had delusions as well. And but he was, again, in a very intellectual kind of master's program of Buddhism studying. So it would be basically going to your university, and those of you that went to university, you studied different things, right? You know, I studied a lot of humanities at university, reading, writing, arts, different things, creative things like that. So, and sometimes you'd come in contact with something in your field and it would blow your mind. You know, for us, we'd go to some performance. We went to some, you know, different levels of things like that. I just remember I had the good fortune to study for 1 year in France. And I had a very passionate art history professor, this very creative woman who was half Italian and half German, I think. She was very passionate, and so she one day took us to one of the art museums in Paris. You know what they're like, you know, and it was the Modern Art Museum, and they were unpacking. If you're familiar with the artist Jackson Pollock, some people have heard of him, American artist, by the way, but they were unpacking one of the big ones they were going to put on display, and I'd never heard of Jackson Pollock, and I was just getting into art a little bit at that age, and we turned a corner. She took us as a class, and we got a special exhibit, special tour. No, the museum was closed, and we got to go into this area, and they were setting up this exhibit of his. So all I remembered was and this kind of blew my mind, and it opened me up to understand who Jackson Pollock was. Now, this is very samsaric on one level, but we turned a corner, and when they're uncrating big masterpieces, things, they come in these big wooden crates, and I'd never seen this before, but we got behind the scenes, and they had the crate on the floor, and the front panel was down, and there was this painting on the floor, and we turned the corner. There was like 20 of us, I guess. We turned the corner, and she dropped to her knees and was sobbing in front of this painting. Now, this is samsara, but I'd never seen anything like this. The professor like totally lost it in front of this painting. You know, it was a whole new world for me so I remember seeing that and just being kind of alarmed at, you know, it would have been nice if it had been more dharmic, but there's Geshe Chikawa with this verse, dropping to his knees, sobbing. What is this? Who wrote this? So you want to sometimes put stuff in contemporary things of what it does to you, that, you know, then I had a different appreciation for this painting that didn't make a lot of sense to me, or things like this, but you get a little light on of, should I pay attention to this? So fortunately with him, with these 8 verses, and think about, when out of envy others mistreat me with abuse, insults or the like, I shall accept defeat and offer the victory to others. We've had many situations in our lives we didn't agree with somebody. And you got into, it could have been as kids in the playground, it was more of a physical thing. I want that toy. Or you broke my toy. Things. But as we get to be adults, we're wrestling over budgets in meetings, your agendas, your plans, that you want this job. I have somebody in my life right now, they're trying to get a new job. And every time they apply, of course, as you know, in standards, they're applying and there's all these other people applying for the same position, these very sought after positions. And then they tell me, well, they got to this far in the interview and then they gave the job to somebody else. And this is life. This goes on all the time. Okay. So on some level, how do I accept the defeat and offer the victory? And especially if you're fighting with someone, you have a disagreement with someone. They can be small disagreements. They can be larger disagreements. So what's that mechanism that I accept the defeat and offer the victory to others? You know, and what if, and this is what people always say, well, what if I'm not wrong? What if I'm not wrong? How can I possibly do that? Okay. This is de-escalation and this diffuses delusion. This dismantles delusion in your mind and it takes all the fuel out of the anger, all the fuel out of the energy of division between you and the other person, all the fuel out of hatred, othering, and you have to practice it and notice. And I give you an example. I gave this example before, I think in another year I was here, was we were running this retreat center in California. And we had all kinds of different people came. We had about 6 or 7 retreat cabins. Individual people would book for a weekend, for 3 weeks, whatever. You could come. And we had a woman come and she stayed for 3 weeks, something like that. And she was really, really miserable the whole time she was there for 3 weeks. And the staff, every day, we discuss what was her latest complaint about. And we didn't see her. She was in the cabin. She sent these notes down. She hated the food. She hated the cabin. The bed was really uncomfortable. The refrigerator didn't really work. It didn't keep the food cold enough. Why was the bathroom separate? I mean, it went on and on, you know, to the deer are too loud. You know, I mean, it was just really, but it was just whatever we did. And the staff were very conscientious. They were really trained we were really there to serve retreaters, and the staff, most of the people I worked with, just wonderful. And they really got it and they really tried. And she had these demands. She wanted certain vitamins and they went out, and we don't buy people. We say, we're not here to do you bring everything you need with you. But they went out and they got her vitamins, and then they were the wrong vitamins. And then it went on from there. So at the end, she demanded, I need to see the director. I hadn't had much interaction with her because that's why there was a staff, and it freed me up to raise money or do other things for that the center needed. And then she demanded to see the director, and I'm not paying my balance or whatever it was. Usually you had to pay in advance, but something, she wanted her money back. She wanted her money back. And and the staff had told me every day, I knew what was happening. So she demanded to see the director. That was me. And I said, okay, sure, of course I'll meet with her, you know. And if you try to have that idea that, once again, bodhicitta, this is a suffering sentient being. This is Lojong. And so this is turning the ego and the self-cherishing on its head. The complete opposite thinking of how most of us are thinking every day, right? And I just ask all of you online, all of you here, have you noticed when you wake up in the morning, every morning, waking thoughts? What are your waking thoughts? Anybody? Be honest. What are your waking thoughts?
Sleep more.
What's that?
Sleep more. It's not time to wake up.
To sleep more? You want to sleep more? Okay.
Yeah.
And what's the sleep more about? Is it about you or is it about others?
Of course, about me.
It's about me. Of course it's about me.
Yeah.
I want to sleep more. Okay. You know, waking thoughts. I need to go to the bathroom. I'm hungry. Coffee. Oh, do I have to get up now? Yeah, whatever. You know, I don't really want to go to work today. Okay. What else are your sleeping thoughts? Kia, you might have different waking thoughts. You thinking about your kids?
Yes, because they're not in Paris at the moment.
Okay, okay. No,
So,
because
yeah.
some people, I find some people with school age kids get a benefit. The people I know with younger school age kids or younger kids, they sometimes wake up thinking about the kid. I have met some mothers where that they go, that's my waking thought. Okay. But still, that's a little bit of an extension of me, myself, and I, my kid. So, but just let's be honest, it's about us mostly. It's
But
about
to
us
be,
mostly.
yeah, just to be honest, at this moment, I'm grieving someone who died. So it's like she's my last thought and she's my waking thought as well.
So
And
you're with somebody, I'm sorry, who's dying right now?
no, I lost someone.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah. So it comes to me, but not in a very sort of always conscious way. It's so fresh, so and raw, so it's just with me.
Yes.
It comes in my dreams. It come like, so I don't know. Of course,
Okay.
it's about me and it's about her, and I can't really distinguish whether it's about me or her at this moment. I haven't come to that point where I did this or I did that or she did, but just that she's gone.
Sure. No, and of course, when we lose a loved one, then we're in a little bit, I'd say, of like an altered space of reality. Often when you lose a loved one and are suffering through the grief of that. So often at those times, like there can be circling of ourselves in our mind, but often it's not. I find it not always as strong self-cherishing, because I'm often thinking about them as well and thinking about all the things around that loss and all the people that are grieving that loss. Sure. Yeah, so it puts us in a little suspended kind of situation. But if we're also honest with ourselves about it, a lot of it is about our.
I think we lost Amy.
Here, we're back on.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, can you hear me now? Yay, okay, great. Yeah, somebody, I thought I saw Paula jump in.
She started another meeting.
She started another, okay, because sometimes you have to watch that where there's another meeting and they jump in and suddenly take over the class. Okay, great. So again, when you think, so this woman wanted to meet, we met, and she went on a tirade for, I don't know, 20 minutes. She just, everything that was wrong. And then I didn't personally feel we did anything wrong. I know the staff, they were great. And so you can sincerely apologize. Sincerely. And so I didn't apologize because I thought we did something wrong. I felt really sorry that we couldn't meet her expectation. And I was really sorry about that. I was really sorry that she was so miserable. I was sorry she had a bad experience. It didn't fit what she wanted. And I genuinely meant that. I was really, really sorry that she was in this state of space. And I didn't say it like, well, I'm really sorry that your mind is such a mess. You know, it wasn't like that, but I really felt bad about the whole situation that she was suffering like this. And I really meant it. And I knew she could feel that I meant it. And what it did is it just she wanted to fight. She kind of went through life, I think, with a lot of criticism. She actually admitted something to me about that. I always go through and I need to find fault, and, you know, and so it took all the fuel out of that for her. Is everything okay? Okay. And it took all that fuel out of her energy of wanting to fight. And then she stopped. What do you say when somebody's saying you're sorry after a while? Nothing to say anymore. Like she had nothing to fight back with. So then I said to her, and we'd be happy to refund all your money. It's just 3 weeks of income, a lot of money for us. But I thought, I'm just gonna go for it. Like, okay, she didn't meet your expectation. We'll refund your entire retreat. You know, she was shocked. She was really shocked. She didn't expect that. She just demands it. She would, you know, this was like her habit. And I said, no, we'll be happy to refund your entire, you know, of all the money. And I'll let the staff know. But then we found something in common. So I knew something about her background, where she was from, and then just started talking separate from the incident. So I offered her the victory, right? It diffuses the whole situation, then found some common thread we had. And then she got all engaged in that, was very excited to find, and we started talking. And then you start doing that and there's connection, positive connection. So she was able to hear that because she got everything she wanted. We're going to refund. So sorry. What else could she say? So then we start talking, and then a really genuine connection started where I became interested in her. I was like, oh, we had this in common. And I said, I've been there. I went there to that shop. Then we start talking, and we must have talked for like a half an hour. She was there longer, half an hour longer. And to the point where it was a nice conversation where she felt very happy and she felt seen somehow. She felt acknowledged, didn't want her refund back, and made an offering to the center on top of. So, but just noting, you have to check yourself. Does it diffuse the situation? You know, I've had it work every time. And Rinpoche, one of his famous things again, but the ego doesn't like that because I'm right. I'm not giving them the victory. The guy's a jerk. You know, I've heard people, but he was a Trumper. I can't say that but you could find something in common with them. Let it go. Again, remember, you're dying. You're not going to be fighting over these things when you're dying. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Find that peace of mind. Rinpoche's famous thing was, I told this story before in another class, that Rinpoche was visiting students in Singapore. I think some of you remember this story, in Singapore. And the husband, it was a very status conscious family that had a lot of money, and the guy, the husband of the family, had bought a new car, and they had neighbors. And so the husband really wanted to talk to Rinpoche because the neighbor scratched his new car, and they had a feud that had been going on for years. So the wife also said, you need to talk to Rinpoche and you need to settle this. This is done. When the car got scratched, she's like, that's it. Like, you cannot keep doing this. The two of you feuding. And the husband refused. So he saw Rinpoche and explained, and he was right. And the guy scratched his car, and the guy's horrible. The neighbor's horrible. This happened to me. This happened to me. Went into Rinpoche. This happened to me. And he wants Rinpoche to agree with him and say, well, you're right. And that guy's not good. And this is what you need to do. And so what Rinpoche said, does he have any hobbies? The neighbor. What do you know about him? Does he have any hobbies? And so he was so furious at the neighbor, he couldn't even think straight. So he said, well, we golf. He doesn't golf with the guy, but that was they belong to a country club, and they golf. They play golf. Okay, went on and on. And then Rinpoche said, then you go out and you buy him a very nice package of very expensive golf balls, like gold golf balls or something. You go out and buy him a nice package, and you wrap it up very, very nicely, and you write a note apologizing for whatever has caused him disturbance from your side, on and on, this whole message. And sometimes you can even write an apology to someone. I've done this, because in this life, there's some people, as soon as I met them, they didn't like me. I never met them before. I never said anything about them. It's past karma. Some seed is in there, and they just, whatever it was, I came up in their view, they didn't like me. Something. So I could write a note apologizing for whatever I disturbed them in this life. And if they're Buddhists, anything that I've ever done to disturb you in this life or past lives, you can say that. You can write that as Buddhists. Like, to really release, because something got created that caused this situation between us. Never met them before. I never had a word with them before. Never even thought about them before. And it's worked 100% of the time for me. Just cut whatever's happened like that. So Rinpoche said, you write this note, and explained a little what to say. And the man refused. He said he's not doing it. And well, I didn't think he said it to Rinpoche, but he walked out and he said to his wife, I'm not doing that. You know, never. I'll never do. But a couple days, 2-3 days went by, a few days. And Rinpoche was at their house for a few days. And somehow, fortunately, he decided to do it. Under duress, like resenting and not happy, and managed to even write the note and got the package nice and gave it to the neighbor. I don't know if he knocked on the door and gave it to him in person or left it at the front door. And that was it. That finished the end of the problem. Just like that. And the neighbor came out, saw him. The neighbor apologized. The neighbor said, I'm going to pay to fix the car. It was the end of the problem. So sometimes it doesn't end that quickly, but for me, I've done it a few times. Most of those times I don't believe in this life I did anything wrong that I ever like that. And it 100% of the time fixed it immediately. Offer the victory to others. That's how significant this verse is. Okay. And here, just to go on with some commentary from His Holiness, if somebody insults, abuses, or criticizes us, saying we're incompetent, that we don't know how to do anything, and so forth. Okay, this happens sometimes. We're likely to get very angry and contradict what the person has said. So you contradict, I'm not like that. And they say, yes, you are. I'm not like that. It goes on and on and on. We should not react in this way. Instead, with humility and tolerance. Two huge words, humility and tolerance. Please bring these into your personal being. Amazing. Humility, unbelievable. Why do we make prostrations? So before a class, I might make 3 prostrations like that. Some people do, prostrations every morning with the 35 confession Buddhas, beautiful prayer, right? You lower yourself onto the ground. It's humbling. It's very humbling to do that like that. We don't often think about that. We're also paying respect. So it's that first limb of the 7 limbs, I pay homage. So I'm kind of lowering myself, bowing myself down, that there may be something greater than me, the Buddha, that I can learn from that can help me transform my mind into from suffering to something glorious like that. And in order to do it, I need that humility of being kind of lowly to the earth so I can receive all that. If I'm arrogant and prideful, it's very hard for anything to get in because I know it all. Nobody can teach me anything. So think about humility. Please think about humility and tolerance this week. Please try to build that in where you can. Tolerance as well. And my brother really, one time it really got me thinking about, really helped me some years ago. There was something and some other member in my family, and they were talking about people that are obese, very, very overweight. And we have a lot of people like that in the United States. Sometimes the diet is not good enough, but people have medical conditions, right? You just don't really know. But there was something, we were walking down the street, there was something where we were seated somewhere and it was very difficult with this very obese person near us. And I said something to my brother about, wow, like people really need to learn how to diet and how to, and then he turned to me and he goes, you don't know what somebody's experience is. And it really shut me down. Like I really thought, you're right. I have no idea what's going on for them. Maybe they've tried losing weight and tried diets and they've got a medical condition. Maybe there's some incredible emotional trauma. Maybe they're just like this. Maybe they like being like this. Maybe, I had no idea. So there I am judging. But if you have the tolerance, realizing everybody's working on their own stuff, and that was also so humbling for me of realizing I have stuff, I'm sure, that drives other people crazy, so this person certainly deserves some respect, some consideration. Okay. So again, think about humility and tolerance this week. Please think about it the rest of your life, that it's, how much of those qualities do you have? There's some people I know incredibly intolerant. They won't put up with anything. Everything has to be very high level. Nothing is. They're frustrated all the time. Not happy. Okay. So this goes on. I just want to go on a little bit where it says we should accept defeat and offer the victory to others. You want to differentiate between two kinds of situation, okay? On one hand, we're obsessed with our own welfare and of course are very selfishly motivated, okay? We should accept defeat and offer the victory to others. And this goes on, even if your life's at stake, there's some extremes of this you can do, you know. So it cuts that selfish motivation, realizing, because again, accepting the defeat, no, I'm lowering myself. I'm a little bit taking myself down a notch, okay? If on the other hand, the situation is such that and so this is my own life at stake, my own reputation at stake, I could say, because then everyone will think I did something wrong. Okay? But on the other hand, others' welfare could be at stake. So you want to work very hard and fight for the rights of others. And you feel like I don't want to accept the loss at all, okay? But we have to push through to accept the defeat. I mean, there's different kinds of motivations involved. And then if you look at bodhisattva vows, some people have bodhisattva vows. So normally vows you would take, you have refuge precepts, and then on those you could take lay vows. There's 5 lay vows, but then you could, the next step would be to take bodhisattva vows. There's 18 root vows, but there's 46 auxiliary or secondary bodhisattva vows. And it refers to a situation in which somebody's doing something very harmful and you have to use forceful methods or whatever else is necessary to stop that person's actions immediately. And if you don't, you've transgressed that commitment, one of the secondary commitments. Auxiliary vow to abandon, not dispelling another's negative actions with wrathful methods that you know will be effective. So wrathful methods are designated different than angry methods, hating methods. So if I'm really, again, this is bodhisattva's a little bit, you want to have a higher mindset, but if I'm reeling, if I'm realizing I can help somebody lessen their negative actions and activities by sometimes exerting a little bit more force. Sometimes you can do like that. Sometimes they refer to it like that. So it might appear that the bodhisattva vow, this 5th verse, mind training, it says one must accept defeat and give the victory to other, that they're contradictory, okay? But they're really not. The bodhisattva precept deals with a situation in which one's prime concern is the welfare of others. So if somebody's doing something extremely harmful and dangerous, it's not wrong then to take strong measures to stop it. They just wanted to clarify that. But for most of the time, you just want to accept the victory and accept the defeat and offer the victory to others. And especially it goes on to say in very competitive societies, which is ours, I'd say certainly the United States, but strong defensive or similar actions are often required. Sometimes you need a little stronger response, but the motivation for these is not selfish concern, but extensive feelings of kindness and compassion towards others. If we act out of such feelings to save others from creating negative karma, then it's entirely correct. So, but on another level, for your own self-cherishing, look at that process in your mind, accepting the defeat, offering the victory. So what they're also saying is sometimes you need to not engage, not accepting that, you're realizing this is injustice. So you have to, your wisdom, you're using your wisdom to discern. Okay, so I want to make sure people understand there are phases of social injustice and you need to step in and say, excuse me, this is wrong. This is wrong, but not in the situation like the retreater that came to us. And we have a lot more situations like that. And especially when you feel the divisiveness, you're disagreeing with someone. We've had these things going on. They're going on a lot in the States right now. People's divisions, family divisions, because of political systems in the States right now. Part of the family voted for this candidate. Part of the other side of the family can't believe they voted for this person. So some people stopped talking. Some people stopped, hanging out with each other because of it. And so, I have a cousin and she didn't have the advantages I have in this life. We're very close in age. We're a couple weeks apart and we've been very close at times. I really like her as a person, but she comes and she and her whole side of the family didn't have the advantages I had, the education that I had, the travel that I've had, things like that. And so, you know, my brother, his family, we all talked about sometimes people, I don't want to just say undereducated or uneducated, tended to vote for one sort of political regime in the country, but that's not entirely true, but it's happened with a lot of them. So she and her whole family voted an opposite way that me and my rest of my family voted. So unfortunately, she and I, we haven't gotten together a lot. I haven't been in the States as long, but when we do, one of the things we do is we never talk about politics. You know, we've just arranged, like, I accept that about her. I'm not going to argue with her. I'm not going to be like, this is right or this is wrong. Occasionally there'll be little bits that come up, and I just find a really sedate way of saying, like, okay, wow, that's how you feel. Okay, all right. Like, I'm, you know, that's information. That's all. I don't have like a big judgment. It's like this. We went through a thing recently, the last time I saw her. She's really a very sweet person, a very good person. But she has adult sons, and one of them has had a long-term girlfriend. And she mentioned that, I said, do you think they'll get married soon? And so she said that the girlfriend doesn't really like her and her husband. And I couldn't imagine why she didn't like them, because she and her husband just seem, if that's your in-laws, they just seem really spacious and really easygoing. And so I said, you're kidding. I said, what's going on? Like, why doesn't she like you? How can she not like you guys? You're fun and you're great. And, you know, so she goes, well, she came the other day and they had the news on in the back room. The girlfriend came to the front door. And so they had a certain news program on that is known in the States as being extremely conservative, of like touting the views of, there's this one channel everybody talks about, of like, you know, you're not really watching that, are you? So she had it on. She goes, well, we had that on, that station. And she knows what that means to me. You know, I'm sure she considers me a liberal. So so then I looked at her and I went, like, at first I didn't quite get it. And she goes, well, she wanted us to turn it off. And then I just looked at her and I said, like, jokingly, I said, Michael's dating a liberal? Like, your son like ended up on the other side. Like, how did that? And then both of us just laughed. Like, there's a connection. It's okay, because I wasn't judging her. I just was like, wow, how did this happen that your son ended up with somebody that doesn't follow your political views at all? And we just laughed. So a lot of it is just letting her have that space. I don't need to win with her and try to convince her. I'm not going to convince her. There's no point. And it just puts a wedge in our relationship, which I don't want, because I really like her. Generally, you can always find something you have in common with people that you like, something you share. So it's very, very tricky, this thing. Let me see if I can find, there's one other thing I wanted to say about this profound verse.
Which translation you're using, because this is slightly different from the one that we shared in the drive. So maybe later on. We
Oh,
can look at
okay.
the version
And
that
let me
you're
see what
using.
version, I'm just going to look for where did I get this version? Let me look at the end. There's many versions of this,
Yes,
though.
yeah.
I don't have a colophon, an ending for it of where I got it from.
So I think this is the one that probably you sent to Lisette. It's from South Africa, Lamrim Buddhist Center, South Africa.
Oh, I have many different Lojong, so I'll look at that as well. Yeah. Yes, yeah, no, that I've got different, exactly, and I've got different ones that I'm different. I like to go through different commentaries that I'm teaching from, so that you get a different view. But let me just see if I can find. I want to find this other one.
You can share both versions of several versions.
Sure, absolutely. Let me just pull up this other. Okay. Yeah, a few of these different. Okay, the one I wanted to show is holiness. Yeah, here's the South African one.
Yeah, that's how the commentary by so.
Yeah. And this is also, okay, that's more for what we're going to do on the retreat as well. But let me just go back to one other thing. Okay, here we go. This is the one, South Africa, and this is another version of Okay. And what His Holiness is just saying in this one, that this, he doesn't elaborate on this as much. Generally speaking, if others have done you wrong without any justification, it is, in worldly terms, lawful to retaliate. Okay, so that's what they're talking about, is you have to weigh with your wisdom, when do I need to do something? But worldly terms, we retaliate. We want to get back. Somebody harmed me, I want to get back. Okay, but the practitioner, His Holiness says, of thought transformation techniques should always give the victory to others. He doesn't comment a whole lot more on that. But again, the significance, you have to try in your own life and notice in the past, and you can reflect when you've been fighting and you continue to fight and you're dug in, as we say, you know, you're digging in your heels, as they say, that I am right. Where does it get you? How do you feel, for one? How does it feel to you? And so check that, because it's division. And I go home miserable. And at least I was right. And I showed the retreater, I'm sorry, we did nothing wrong. So she would have demanded her money back. She might have left angry, bad mouthing us to everyone, or we would have given her money back and been out all that money that we really could have used. She would have left pretty disheartened, pretty miserable. I don't like when I see people like that. They leave a retreat center like that. You know, you could say, but it's her own doing. I don't feel really good saying that. You have to check your own experience of that. How does that feel? Doesn't feel very good like that. So slowly, and then you just experiment a little bit on your cushion. What would I have to say? Sometimes we have to rehearse it a few times. It's not natural. You know, I'm actually forcing it. I really don't want to say that to the person. This was the guy in Singapore. I mean, his wife said it was like every energy of every cell in his body to walk over to the neighbors. He hadn't been over there in like 7 years or something. Hadn't crossed that side of the driveway, like wouldn't even look over there. So all these things we do to avoid, there's this person, there's this, and all I can do is say, I'm sorry. And something so quick like that, something so small like that. And then, right? So the other thing we have to do is a little bit go to battle as a bodhisattva warrior. I would say you're not going to war with other people again. I say this over and over. You're going to war with your own self-cherishing, with your own delusions, you know, figuring out which are the strongest delusions first. That's what I'm going to war with. That's what I'm battling with. Okay. In a compassionate way with yourself. Bodhisattva warriors are enormously compassionate. You know, so those are the tools we're using: compassion and wisdom and loving kindness. That's what we're applying. So over and over, you know, figuring out the more compassionate. And what I want to do is, especially in its country where I'm living some of the time, the United States, it's, you hear people around you, well, you need to get them back. Well, you need to tell him, you know, you need to straighten that out, meaning you're going to show him that you're right. So you have to constantly battle that. You know, I notice that when I come back and I see I'm around kind of non-dharmic people so much, a lot of some of the people that I know, and I'll hear their, you know, it's not laced with kindness necessarily. So sometimes I have the ability to interject a little bit if I feel close to people and go, well, did you ever think about where does that get you? You know, then you're more divided, right? And sometimes they'll agree and they'll go, yeah, I guess you're right. I go, so then you're right. So I had a roommate years ago. I lived in San Francisco. I shared a flat with a couple of people, and I enjoyed my roommates. And one of my roommates had a boyfriend who, his name was Leslie, and there was Leslie's way of doing something, and there was the wrong way. And that's how he went through space, always. And for some reason, I could somehow humor him, and I just accepted. I wasn't any great practitioner. I was just getting into the Dharma, but somehow I could just, to keep the peace in the household, he was over a lot. You know, we'd have dinners and just to keep the peace, I somehow found a positive side of him and just kind of would hang with that. And then one time his girlfriend, so my roommate, said to me, after some months, she goes, he doesn't like a lot of my friends, but he really likes you. You know, and I could, and again, it was tolerance. I realized I could just tolerate him, you know, but there were nights, there were evenings, we'd be having dinner or something. And then after a while, I just got tired of the thing and I could just excuse myself. You know, so you need a mental break. And that way I could just excuse myself, go to my room and be like, good night, everybody. It was great to see you. And I'm done. So that there wouldn't be the tension and like, I don't like him. And I would hear people arguing with him that we'd have over for dinner that disagreed. And then there'd be a big fight and there, you know, and so there's ways that it just keeps the peace on the planet, just makes it easier. And so sometimes I realize you can always be right. And there's some people I know like this. Your choice is you always want to be right, and then you're always alone and kind of isolated and secluded and excluded. Because people don't like that kind of arrogance all the time. And we all know people like that. They always have to be right. They always have to win. It's so boring. It's so tiring. Please.
Is there space for a question? With
Yeah,
a little
go ahead. Yeah, I'll take some
example?
questions.
Can I introduce it with a small example?
Yes, please.
I have a family, a cousin, close to me, grew up together, beautiful person. To make it a short story, he now sometimes asks me for a little bit of aid at the end of the month because he doesn't get it right financially, apparently.
Mhm.
Don't talk about it too much. It's been going on for a while. And well, I tolerate it, send it over. Sometimes it comes back, sometimes it doesn't. It's all right for me because I understand it. Now at one point, I also noticed I feel like I am doing harm by tolerating it now because it's not the amount and it's also fully out of love. It's all right to get it, whether it's coming back or not. That's okay, and I'm grateful for that decision. I feel like tolerated might be harmful in the longer while, creating a pattern in his behavior that might create something bigger. Where do we draw the line that you want to be tolerant with somebody, or where we say maybe you need something else?
So you become a Buddha and then you know the wisdom just to discern. But in the meantime, it's a great example, is what we would call this in the States is, are you enabling him? Are you kind of a codependent in his need for money? And so what I would do is you're using the wisdom that you have wisdom, and at times discern where, and maybe you make a deal with him where, you know, I'm only going to give you until the end of this month, like name a month in a couple months and say, I won't be able to do anymore. You're going to need, like, figure out what does he need to do to get on his feet? You know, is there a way to help him with that rather than just funneling out the money if you're realizing anymore, it may not be really what's helpful. That's what I would do. And that's just using your wisdom, you know, to discern. Because we do get in situations like that and we end up, as I said in the States, we would say you're enabling them to just keep them asking for the money. And sometimes after a while, it doesn't feel good where you realize, I don't think I'm helping anymore. Then I think you can just have an honest conversation with him. And, you know, it's very nice to do that, but then to a degree, yeah. Kia.
Yes, maybe a stupid question, but from the culture that I'm from, which is Sweden, there's a lot of trying to find a middle ground, like a compromise or an understanding all the time. But what I understand from this view is that you're not necessarily trying to specifically find that middle ground or that compromise where, you know, you kind of give and take a little bit, but you're really just giving it over and you're not specifically interested in having to like share your point of view, if you see what I mean. Am I understanding this right?
Yes, I understand what you're saying. And I would say that you'd be surprised when you offer the victory and accept the defeat and offer the victory to the other, how an understanding comes from that so often. And the reason is they are able to let their defenses down, whatever karma got created that's creating you to be an enemy to them or creating this problem. They let their defenses down. They feel safer because you've apologized, because you've owned it and said and accept that, yes, you won this one. So they're a little more willing than to relate to you, to hear what you have to say. And through that, you can find some understanding. I found that happen in the cases that I've done it to, where I've written a note or apologized directly to somebody. And then as a result of that, which is my humbling myself, humility, and meaning it, then we could talk just like the retreater. She and I, we could go into another subject and then find common ground. And suddenly through that, you find the middle way, relating. I found that in many. So it's very nice if you can find a compromise, but this is often in talking in situations where you can't. So the guy in Singapore, they were not going to find a solution. They weren't speaking. So if I kind of said, okay, I'll give it to him, you know, I feel like he did it to me, but I'm going to offer it to him and I'm going to accept, and I'm really going to be that and feel that, then suddenly the neighbor was able to open up. And then they found a common, you know, I'll fix your car and I'm sorry. And yeah, it's amazing how that will come from it. That's the beauty of it, of that verse. So I want to go on a little bit in our remaining time, going back to our initial thing. And I want to just read a few of these things that are in the text following this section, which is about relative truth. Again, understanding, having patience with yourself when it says it's very difficult to practice taking suffering. And let me just share my screen. Yeah. It's bigger too. Some nice things you probably read, but it's nice to revisit again. It's very difficult to practice suffering as a path when you actually come face to face with sorrows. You know, just like Kia was saying, she's experiencing some grief, you know, tremendous grief right now over losing a loved one. So again, important to become familiar in advance with the practices, with positive practices of virtue that you apply again and again to unfavorable circumstances, that A to G. Like the more I sit and build up a practice, and just like Marie-Elaine was saying, I really think I should take one of them a week at least. Take one a month and you live with that, where it becomes very part of your mind, part of your mindset. So then I start recognizing. So we try as much as possible. And saying it's not enough simply for suffering to become the supportive virtuous practice. You have to realize perfectly this is what's happened. You should certainly obtain a strong and stable continuity of joy through the realization of really realizing that accepting this suffering is really what is really the ice cream, is what I'm saying. Now that takes practice. That takes practice till I'm really welcoming it like ice cream. We're still a little bit like, oh, I don't want to suffer. I don't want that to happen. So we work towards that. We work towards that. And again, you know, when I get to where the practice has unfolded, you reflect that through this, I am going to gain more joy. You know, I am going to gain more stability in my practice through this experience. And that's a lot of taking the suffering as purification like that. And it's hard to get to, even if the suffering is severe, it's supremely an agreeable thing. That takes a huge space of practice. Like it says, like a ladu, a sweet, like I was saying, like ice cream. That's going to take more practice to get there. Okay. But thinking about it again and again, you know, suddenly makes the other parts fall away. The suffering can be, you know, it is helping me reduce delusion. It is helping me understand the nature of samsara, to renounce more of that. It is helping me build compassion on and on slowly. This is hard. This is difficult, these trainings. Okay, here it says at the bottom, in period of withdrawal from meditation, okay? And it says also here, if you gradually train yourself through small sufferings, as I mentioned before, by gradual stages, finally you come to be able to take on greater sufferings. You gain experience through things that are beyond the capacity of your own mind. That's how we get stretched through our practice. And then it says, when you withdraw from meditation, you should pray to the Lama and the 3 jewels in order to turn suffering into the path. When the mind's grown stronger, after making offerings to the triple gem, you should request them to send favorable circumstances in order that you may receive training in the practice of virtue. So one of the things I wanted to mention that is left out of a lot of Westerners' practices, it's so important, is that over and over, and Rinpoche goes through this, is when we do a retreat, and when we're doing a group retreat in our tradition, generally a formal group retreat, Rinpoche really likes us to start with a guru yoga practice. And the one he really likes is elaborate, and it's called Lama Chopa. So tomorrow here at the center, I think Annalise comes and she'll lead Lama Chopa. So for tantric practitioners, you often have a commitment that on the Tibetan 10th and 25th of the month, you have to do a certain ritual. Now, you can do a short version of it, or often the centers do Lama Chopa, okay? It also, in Sanskrit, it's called Guru Puja, okay? It's not that there's a Lama Chopa, but it means you're doing a certain assembling lamas through a visualization, assembling holy beings, that you read certain verses. It's basically an elaborate 7-limb prayer. And through that, you kind of visualize this assembly like a very high level spiritual party. And then you recite these verses, and through the verses, you're setting up offerings. In your mind, you imagine offering, but there's also a lot of the verses are requests. And so they have the formal requests in the book, but in my practice every day, I like to make specific requests. And there's a connection that we forget, is to make requests to your teacher, your lama, particular teachers you have, and ask them. And you're asking really the absolute guru in your heart, okay, what would I like to accomplish in this life as far as my practice? Okay, what do I need help with in my practice? What am I struggling with on a daily level every day with my mind? You know, and you can ask for specific things. My kid is sick. You know, I need help with this specific thing for my kid. I need help for this specific thing in my relationship with my partner at work. You know, ask for the basic things you need, but also ask for it on a loftier level in your practice, that you want to actualize the path, that you want to be able to read and understand this book on emptiness and learn how to effectively meditate on emptiness, that you want to finish this entire course of a basic studies course or a master's program course and understand that what Chandrakirti is talking about or something. So be very specific. And then the verses just give you a general thing that I'm asking the Lama. And it has a lot of beautiful praises about the Lama. So we don't understand what that does in our mind. It's huge. You know, we leave that out. So again, the reason I come and teach at centers is only because I've been requested. I don't just go, well, I think Amsterdam sounds great. You know, I'd really like to park myself there for a while. It's because I've been requested. That's why I go to the different centers, because my teachers advise me to do that, to teach and things. So that request period from the centers, it really is significant for them to ask me, can you come? So they don't have to do a formal thing, but I get an email and then it reminds me, please, we really want you to come here. It tells me they really want to make that connection, but we want to do it with our lamas, whether we see them every day or not, or we have a picture of them, or they've passed away. Like, help me, because that's all they want to do. Buddhas and bodhisattvas are around us all the time. We just don't have the karma to see them because we're so dense. So make that connection. And that's a really integral part of practice that we don't realize that we need to do that. It's very significant. So let me go back to the text. Yeah. Okay. So when you're first training, here it says, important to keep entertainments at a distance. Let's look at how that is in your life. Entertainments at a distance, okay? So this is tricky for us as lay people, especially. The one thing, and many things I liked when people asked me when I first became a nun, oh, I had friends, what, you know, do you miss things? Like, no, you can't do this and can't do that. And I actually felt, and one of the reasons I think I was attracted to being a nun too was I mentioned my life was just going in that direction more and more, but it really lessened distractions. So there were things where people invite me to a party and I'd feel obligated to go. but I really didn't want to go. Or then I had to, and where I was living at the time, we were living in the woods. So just to crawl out of there was usually to get into one of the places was like 40-minute drive each way. So, and the road was very small and narrow and winding and coming back late at night on this little mountain road and things. So sometimes I could just say like, I can't, you know, I'm a nun. I don't have to go to that anymore. You know, or I'd say, oh no, we're going to do this practice at the center. You know, I wasn't lying about the things, but I just felt like it kind of released me from some of that. So look at your entertainments. Look at the habits of your entertainments. You know, I know I have certain friends and they, you know, it's like Tuesday night, they go, oh, we watch a show that's on Tuesday nights. Now you can watch it, stream anything, anytime you want. You don't have to have your thing, but there's people like, this is, we've recorded this show. So we're going to watch the show that we've recorded. You know, there's 6 episodes. This is the 2nd season, they'll say. Did you see the 1st season? So I know this, that suddenly means when I look at it, and I've had my family said, oh, you got to watch this show. You'd like this. And then I look at it, but it's like 3 seasons. Each season, there's like 12 episodes. That's 12 hours there. 3 seasons, 45 hours a time. That's a week, basically. That's a lot of time. I could be doing something else. So it doesn't mean you're devoid and you don't watch any video at some point. But be careful. What are you know, at one point I was watching a lot of police videos some years ago, some police things. And I used to just watch TV when I was visiting family because I didn't have a TV like that. So I just noticed that that's what they're like, oh, we watch this series. So, and then I got involved in the series, you know, because I'd see it at their houses. You start, you know, the characters come to life. So be cautious. Be cautious of the imprint that it would leave, the imprint on my mind versus me watching some Dharma video leaves a different imprint on my mind. You know, something about his holiness or something like that. Okay, so think about. But again, within reason. So here it talks about worries caused by enemies, relatives, wealth. Find a balance. Find a balance in your life. You're not ordained. You're not monastic. So a little bit easier to swim around those kind of things, but find a balance. And then somebody was saying to me, who was saying to me yesterday, they didn't have any time to practice or they didn't. And somebody else that was talking about they watch a lot of TV. So it was like, okay, what about just lessening? And I've mentioned this before, borrowing, like figure out how many hours of TV do you watch a week? Be honest with yourself. It's a great exercise. Great exercise. I'll ask you to do this week. A great exercise. Can you analyze how many hours am I spending on video streaming of other programs, not Dharma programs, but programs that I wouldn't even say are kind of self-help, just stories. One of the things, and one of my distractions is I read novels. I like novels. So Rinpoche, this had me a little less on the novel thing, is we were at a retreat in the States and a couple hundred people, and Rinpoche walked by a friend and she was talking and she had a book in her hand. It was a mystery novel. And Rinpoche said, oh, the book, what is that? You know, and she said, and she was very open. She goes, oh, Rinpoche, it's a mystery novel. And then he said, is it true? And she said, no, it's a novel. You know, it's not true. And Rinpoche said, it's not true. Like, why are you reading it? Like, it's a made up story of, you know, it made me think. I knew that the message was for me over here. I was like 3 down from her. You know, sometimes a message comes through another student for you, that you hear the message. So I remember thinking, oh yeah, you know, how many of these novels do I enjoy, or are they leading me to some deeper? Sometimes they do, you know, sometimes you get some slice out of it. So interesting. So what are the habits? Can you then borrow or reduce a little bit of that watching and take that half hour or hour that you say, I'm going to make a deal, 1 less hour a week, and move that into some Dharma practice. Reading that book you were going to read, setting up your practice, doing another meditation, reading another section in another Dharma text can be really, really helpful. Really helpful. Because you want to think about, when I'm dying, what do I want to come up in my mind? What's going to be the imprint that comes out? The police procedurals are going to come up in your mind. I don't want that. You know, for me, at one point, I remember my sister telling me, I think I just seen the movie some years ago, And she told me she was reading this book. And we were discussing that occasionally, it used to be when you'd start a book, we felt like we had to finish the book, whether we liked it or not. And she goes, no, I don't do that anymore. She goes, I was reading a novel. She was reading a novel about a man who was keeping women in a pit in his house so that he could use their skin later to make a female outfit for himself. Remember that movie? Silence of the Lambs. Do I want that on my consciousness when I'm dying? That imprint on my mind, you know? Because those things are very strong. They leave very strong imprints. Then what happens now with streaming services? Be cautious. You can watch anything over and over and over again. I've seen people, my niece does it. She sees a thing, she's seen this movie, she'll say 3 times. The first time she wanted me to watch with her, I thought it was garbage, but she's seen it 3 times. That imprint goes in 3 times, you have that imprint. So habit over and over. Please check your mind. Check what the stories do for your mind. Are they beneficial? Some of them might be. There might be some moments that you have a moment where something lights up. How much of it? Is it violent? Is it leaving a violent imprint in your mind? Is it leaving an imprint of grasping and desire on your mind? I was brainwashed as a kid with romantic comedies. We watched these, you know, the Hollywood endings, we called it, where people waltzed off happily ever after into the sunset. So my relationships were geared on that. That's why I wanted to find that person. We're always going to be happy. It doesn't exist. But I was really brainwashed by it. There's got to be somebody. Then a problem would come up. I'm like, why? I thought they were perfect, right? In the beginning they were, but it doesn't work like that. So we're deceived all the time by those kind of things. Be cautious about what you're watching, what you're reading, what you're looking at, what kind of magazines. What do you look at online? What kind of videos? There's all these things that grab your attention. It's quite beautiful, all this. And it talks about the training. Again, your mind will become flexible. You'll have a breath of space in your mind, okay? You're easy to be with. You're courageous. It has all these beautiful benefits. So it's really nice to continue to go on reading more of the different things that okay. I wanted to start to talk about ultimate truth. How do we view this mind training via emptiness? Okay. And so this takes a lot of training. Okay. And when you come out of the state, so a lot of meditation on emptiness. So what you would say is, if we're just taking suffering, okay, and you want to take suffering of samsara's nature, I'm stuck in traffic, okay? The traffic doesn't exist from its own side. There's no inherently existent traffic there. And so we were doing a lot of this over the weekend, that the experience of the traffic is coming from my mind. This is what Buddhism says. It's coming from my mind. And what that means is, oh, it's almost 9 o'clock. Wow. Sorry, I wanted to get further into the emptiness. I want you to think about this week. Coming from the side of my mind. So it looks like there are cars there and bicycles. Here comes the tram coming through, or I forget, what do you call that here? The tram, okay. So coming through there's all these people. If you go especially into the tourist areas, it's simply a projection from my mind. So some people don't mind the crowdedness. They like it. They like to be in the middle of everything. It's pleasant for them. That means it's an arisal of a pleasant thing for them, okay? If you don't like it, it's the arisal of negative karma coming up in your mind. That's all that's there. So there's no point in my getting disturbed. It's simply coming from my mind. I've created this vision. I've created this projection onto it. But the issue is, how do I respond to it? How do I respond to it? So with Lojong, I want to respond in a balanced, uplifted way, because it doesn't exist at all the way I think it does. It doesn't exist at all. Then I have an issue at work. The person didn't prepare what I thought they were going to prepare. They didn't show up and meet me halfway the way I had prepared. Then you watch disappointment come up in your mind. Okay, so I've got a little bit of that negative experience comes up in my mind. And then with Lojong, person doesn't exist at all the way that I think they do? Have I ever not presented and not shown up with what I was supposed to do? Right? Have you ever done that? I've done it, right? We've all been there. So it's kind of like, that's where this could come from. It's coming from my mind out there. This person's actually showing me my mind in my disappointment or my lack of respect to them, or why didn't they do that? You know, now I'm a little resentful at them. Okay. So we come to a further lesson, and I want to go to, for one moment, the 8 verses number 1. And we'll keep coming back to these. And there's other verses for this, but I want to go to number 1, determined to obtain the greatest possible benefit for all sentient beings, who are more precious than a wish-fulfilling jewel. And really Rimshay change, instead of I shall hold them most dear at all times, is I hold them most dear at all times. It's very active. Not that I shall in the future, right now, I hold them most dear at all times. So that person that maybe disappointed me, they didn't show up, I got a little irritated at them, I notice irritation. It's good to notice that, you just notice it. I'm not going to act on it right now. That's my mind training. And a bigger space is, they're my most precious teacher. They're showing me my irritation, where I need to work, right? The people I get along with, they don't show me irritation, right? And so I can kind of say, I'm really bigger than that. I'm really not an irritated person. I never experience irritation when I'm around all these people. I want to hang out with these people, but then somehow somebody pops up and irritation arises in my mind. Haven't fixed it yet. It's still there. That's why I need this person. So you come to really cherish that person. The most difficult people, because you really get to see your mind. And I know we had these experiences at the residential centers, a couple of them I was running, when a difficult retreater would show up again. It could be a group retreat, or they could be renting their own cabin, but the staff would, I mentioned this the other day, the staff would make a joke and say, like, we'd have our staff meeting, our most precious retreater is back. And they would say it sarcastically, like, oh, great. But the thing is, then we were working with it as a staff. The staff were great. And we'd say, okay, so instead of being sarcastic about it, let's work with it. You know, and people went out of their way to really try to accommodate this difficult person and make them happy and use what was coming up in their mind, whether irritation was coming up or fear was coming up, or they got angry at her, or they were, and they were really using it. It was very remarkable. It was very inspiring to see how the staff were working with, and then they'd a little bit talk about it, not in a glib way of like, oh, it's so great. I'm so glad she came but they were really like, wow, I'm really becoming friends with her. Some of them were like, myself, I did. I remember this one woman, and several of us really became to find her endearing, genuinely, like we really started liking her. So you can see, and we're not any great practitioners, but people, you really have to work with that. It's your most precious being, the most difficult ones. Okay. So, and realize that when you see that person at work, they don't exist at all the way you think. There's no solidly existing irritating person there. Okay. They don't exist like that at all. And again, there's a raw information of a human being. And then some of them I label, I like this person. Some of them my mind labels, I don't like this person, based on the karmic seeds in your consciousness, in your mind, of what happens to be firing at that moment. And then that person happens to walk up at that time, and you project negativity on them. Doesn't exist like that at all. No inherent, concrete, irritating person out there at all. So keep working with that, and see if you can write down some examples of things that you're working with. Is it working? Any last questions before we part tonight of anything I've said? Everybody okay in here? Online, everybody? Okay. We're going to conclude with our dedication prayers. whatever merit we have created from this time together, let's keep working on the Lojong text, especially transforming suffering into happiness, and the 8 verses, which should be in the OneDrive that Lizette has made available, I believe. And I think there was that South African commentary from His Holiness that laid out some of the verses as well. So have a look at those. Read the Lojong text over again of the turning suffering into happiness. Really look at each paragraph. Make any notes that you have any questions, and continue. What would be great is to continue working once again with the A through G. So just like Mary Elaine said, you can just keep working. Just take another one and spend the week with it then, like that. And explore the emptiness of what disturbances come into your mind this week. What situations, are there any situations this week that you could also let your aversion go and offer the victory to others, accept the defeat and let it go and offer the victory to others? How would you like to do that? What are the words you're going to say? What are the activities you're going to do around that? Some really, really helpful exercises. And think about cherishing. Are there any beings this week that turn up that you really see as precious because they're really showing you what you need to work on? How does that work? How do you relate to them? May we take any merit, any positive energy from our time together, and may it help us have a bigger understanding and a bigger practice of Lojong that'll help us become a Buddha as quickly as we can, help us progress along that path to full awakening, so we can be of the most benefit to all living beings. May whatever virtue I've collected benefit the teachings and all transmigratory beings, and may it especially cause the essence of perfect pure Losang Drakpa's teachings to shine forever. The short mandala. This ground anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, 4 continents, the sun and the moon, I imagine as a Buddha land and offer it. May all transmigratory beings enjoy this pure land. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niratayami. Ogewadi Nyodudan Lama Sange Drogyorne Drowachikyang Maluba Dei Sala Gupasho. Yeah. Changju Senjo Rinpoche. Oh, that's the wrong one. Sorry. Let me find that verse. It's back here. Changju Senjo Rinpoche. Mage Panyam Ge Gyurchi. Ke Panyam Pame Payi. Gone Gondu Belwarsho. And we will dedicate with emptiness. She says one of the most important dedications. Due to all the past, present, and future merits collected by me, the numberless Buddhas, the numberless sentient beings, which are completely empty of existing from their own side, may I, who am completely empty of existing from my own side, achieve the state of full enlightenment, which is completely empty of existing from its own side, and lead all sentient beings who are completely empty of existing from their own side to that state which is completely empty of existing from its own side, by myself alone, whom completely empty of existing from my own side. And the long life prayer for His Holiness the Dalai Lama. We're going to do this middle one. Savior of the land of snows, teachings and transmigratory beings, who extensively clarifies the path that unifies emptiness and compassion to the lotus holder tent in Gyatso, I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. We're going to do Rinpoche's swift return prayer. Peerless teacher and assembly of the children of the victorious ones, Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas, victorious Losang father and sons, along with the lineage masters, all the objects of refuge of infinite lands, please bestow the virtue and goodness of accomplishing this prayer here and now. Holding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings, through explanation and practice, you wore the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Incomparable Venerable Guru, to you I make requests. While striving single-pointedly for the sake of the victorious one's teachings, the sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, and from other living beings you suddenly departed to peace. What a great loss. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truth of the blessings of the ocean of the three jewels and the great waves of bodhicitta of the children of the victorious ones, may the smile of a reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for fortunate disciples. So we'd like to dedicate for all the beings around the planet who need additional healing. May they receive it immediately, completely. For all the wars all over the planet to be ended now. For all the minds of the totalitarian leaders, may their minds be merged immediately with emptiness and bodhicitta. For the great flourishing of all of our centers, harmony at and among all of our centers, and particularly our communities here in Amsterdam at Maitreya Institute and in London as well. Thank you so much. And tomorrow, I think, is Introduction to Tantra. We'll have a couple sessions, I think, on that. And then I'll be back Tuesday night with the Lojong. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Lovely to see everyone. Please be well. Have a good week. You can stop the recording. Yeah, thank you.